Okay, welcome everybody. Hope you liked that jam. And we're going to get started with our webinar today, our Ceros Educate webinar today, Ceros Content Creation Efficiency. And in this session, we're going to be taking a look at the ways that you can save time with creating experiences in Studio and Editor, and also scale your output and repurpose and reuse content time and time again. And my name is Travis. I am the digital content educator on the Ceros Educate team. I will be your host for today. And in my now 4 years here at Ceros, I've often heard, well, not often, but occasionally heard from some of our users like, hey, I wish I had more time to build stuff from scratch in studio. And I totally get it. A lot of times we don't have as much bandwidth as we would like to work on stuff that's bespoke, that's, really niche and really elaborate. Sometimes you just kind of need to get on the ground and hit the ground running really quickly with your content creation. So I hope that this session will be insightful for those users that need to save time to be able to create content that is reusable, that is scalable, and also, take a look at bringing other individuals into the content creation discussion, folks like marketers, copywriters that typically wouldn't be involved with that design process. I think you might be surprised at what you can do there to, further scale content across your organization, even outside of your dedicated design team. So, along our journey today, we'll be examining a couple different pillars. We'll be looking at templates, which are pre-built Ceros experiences. We'll then examine the asset library, which is a internal pool of assets in your Ceros account that is shared by all of your account users. And then we'll take a look at Editor, which is the kind of streamlined content creation side of things here at Ceros, which allows you and other folks that are maybe less design savvy, those marketers, those copywriters, to jump into a pre-built experience that you already have and make updates to the copy, the images, and be able to reiterate and repurpose content. So again, you're really scaling your output. So we're going to cover a lot in this session, and if you have questions throughout, please drop those in the Q&A or chat windows, and we'll have some time at the end to go over your questions. And I'll also share some resources for everybody on kind of next steps, or if you're a newer user, how to get started. Okay, so I thought it was best to approach this conversation today by examining this content creation efficiency flow from kind of a new user lens, or at least in an account that doesn't really have any content existing, to kind of illustrate that, hey, you can make something out of nothing by leveraging stuff that we provide to you here at Ceros. So pre-built templates, Ceros assets, and that kind of stuff. So I've got an account here that is a brand new account. All it has here are these getting started experiences. These are just learning experiences that we provide to every new account to kind of get you up to speed with how to leverage the platform. But again, I'm going to kind of operate this from the lens of, hey, I'm a newer user. I don't have a lot of bandwidth. I need to create some content for my team quickly that's engaging, that's effective, that meets my design and project goals. Where do I start? So we'll kind of approach it from that perspective and walk through, how you can leverage templates, the asset library, and all that stuff. Okay, so there are a couple different areas in the admin where you can access templates from. And again, templates are pre-built experiences. So there's the home tab. In this ready to start creating section, we have multiple tabs of templates that you can grab. There's also this create button here where you can select template. And all of our templates can be found in the templates tab right here. There's an area where you and your team can create or use experiences that you've templatized. We'll talk more about that later. But let's say I don't have a piece ready in my account that I've templatized. Let's say I want something that's already pre-built from Ceros Inspire. I can select Browse Ceros Inspire right here, and this is a gigantic gallery of pre-built Ceros experiences. These can be sorted with the All Types drop-down menu here on the right. There are so many experience types you can leverage here, everybody. And you can also search for specific keywords here, like maybe I want experiences that have some type of data visualization. I can search for data, and then all of these experiences have at least some component that's either a graph or a statistic, something in there that you can use for data viz. And these come in all shapes and sizes. Some experiences will just be kind of pieces of micro content like this map. components experience where it's just intended to be embedded on a larger parent page. And other things will be more built out, like this case study experience. That's kind of a long scrolling, case study landing page. And keep in mind, as you're browsing through these templates, you're not bound to using anything that you don't like in a template. So if it gets you 90% of the way there, awesome. You can always delete, add, or repurpose the content in a template as you see fit. So that means all of the text boxes, all of the images, even the interactions and animations can be changed. This is all just kind of placeholders, but again, the idea here is that we're giving you these templates so that you can hit the ground running with your content creation and take something that's already pretty much built out. And if it meets, the needs of your project, you can just use this, plug in your content, and be good to go. And it takes you a fraction of the time to get from point A to B with your content creation process than it would if you were creating an equivalent of this experience from scratch. So, one thing I would do, everybody, as you're looking through these templates is really think about the goal of your project. Who's my audience? What purpose does it serve? Does it need to have specific types of interactivity? Do I need to have a place for a form somewhere in there for lead gen? What do I need this design to have? Then from there, that will inform what you can grab from the Ceros Inspire gallery here. So I think the more you can answer those questions coming in, the why, the what it needs to have before you start looking through these, the better you'll be able to, grab something from here and use it effectively. But remember, you can add, remove, and change things in a template, even if it gets you most of the way there. Okay, so let's say I'm doing a case study. Maybe I don't know, I'm doing an analysis on music theory or how music relates to learning, something like that. I'm just throwing out a random scenario. And I see this experience, and oh, there's a really cool video here at the top with some musicians playing in a concert hall. That inspires me. It's also got a lot of imagery and iconography that kind of fits the theme that I'm going for with my piece. So yeah, I like the tab module right here, the carousel up here is great. I think I can get mostly by with leveraging what's already here in this experience for my project. So if it checks enough of my boxes for what I need my design to have, I can select the Use Template button right here, give it a name. So maybe I'll call this Music Case Study. And this is just one scenario, everybody. And then I can select an existing or a new folder. Since I don't have any other folders, I'm going to create a new one here that I'll just call Case Studies. Select Add, and then I can pick the folder that I want to import this template into. And it's going to create a perfect copy of that Ceros Inspire template in my account that is now mine to use. Awesome. And then I can jump right into the experience by selecting Open Experience. Amazing. So the first thing that I'm going to want to do is really kind of get a lay of the land, kind of figure out how this all works. And if you already did some of this work when you were looking at the gallery, you might need to do less of this at this point. But what I always like to do when I'm first encountering an experience that I'm unfamiliar with is open it up in the preview, which if you're unfamiliar with where that is this play icon in Studio, and just kind of get a feel for it. How does the interactivity work? Okay, I know that scrolls me down to this section here. We've got a carousel with 3 slides. Really just kind of play around with things, see the layout, and while you're doing this, figure out, maybe make a checklist somewhere or, start wireframing something off to the side where you're going to input your own data, your own copy, your own images. The more of that work you can do up front, the kind of brainstorming of like, hey, what am I going to need to replace? Like, I know this copy is going to need to be updated because it's all placeholder, right? I might want to put in a new video here because this is just a stock video, but it's a good source of inspiration and I like how it's pinned. But really just kind of determine, hey, what am I going to need to update in here? And do I want to use everything? Are there bits that I need to get out of here? Do I need to add something here? And I think going through that process as you familiarize yourself with the layout of a template will quicken the process of how you go about making those updates and repurposing the template experience. So a lot of this comes down to strategy and how kind of dialed in you are to the needs of your design. Okay, so I've gone through and I'm going to update a couple sections for this demonstration. Maybe I'm going to update the header section and maybe this carousel section. I'll update the fonts. Maybe I'll swap out some images, update some of the placeholder copy just to show you an example of what this flow might look like. Okay. Oh, and one other thing to call out too, before I even go there, is oftentimes when you bring in a template experience from Ceros Inspire, there will be instructions on the outside of the canvas that kind of clue you in on how to update or manage specific sections or assets in the design here. Now, if you don't see these right away, make sure when you're working with a template experience that you select the view drop-down menu and enable show outside canvas because these instructions will always be on the outside of the canvas so that they're not impeding the rest of the design. So if you have this on in a template and there's nothing there, then there's probably no instructions. Also, typically the instructions are placed at the top of your layer hierarchy, usually in a group or a folder that says instructions or template instructions. And you don't have to use these. You can delete them if you prefer to just to kind of go at your own. But these can provide insight on, how to navigate and how to update certain things in the templates that you bring in. So just wanted to touch on that really quick. Okay, so I've got my experience here, and I'm going to make some edits to it. I'm going to start with the text. And I actually saw a question earlier from Lauren who asked, do you know if there will be a way in the future to change a font globally throughout an experience? And the short answer is, I believe that is coming, that is planned. But right now, what you can do, Lauren, is you can actually select text boxes simultaneously in your layers panel. So if you hold down the command key or control key on your keyboard, depending on what OS you're on, you can select layers simultaneously. So I've got all three of these text boxes in my header section selected. And now I can go in to my font library and change this to a different font. And if I don't have one here that I need, I can open up the font library, which is this plus icon just next to that font drop-down menu. And in here, I could upload my brand fonts, or I could use a Google font, which I'll do for this demonstration. So I'm going to search for Fustat, which is a font that we use here at Ceros quite often. Select OK. Once it's been added to my experience fonts, I still got all of my text boxes selected, and then check this out. Boom, they all updated simultaneously. Cool. So step one is done. I've got my brand font, which in this case we're going to pretend is Fustat, added to the experience, and now I can start making things more cohesive and more on brand. So honestly, before you even start selecting text boxes, I know I did this for the demonstration of selecting them and then adding the font, but you might just want to get that process out of the way. Like in the first experience you create, or you make a template, or you use a template from, upload your fonts. That way everyone in your account has access to them because these fonts that you upload here are shared account wide. That way everyone can use the same brand font and have quick access to them in all of your experiences. So another tip there. Okay, but I'm not going to stop there. I'm also going to update the color of my copy. Maybe, actually, I'll go with a little bit of a darker color here. Maybe this one. That looks pretty good. Change this. And then maybe this one here too. Okay, starting to look different. And since this is a music case study, maybe I'll change this to say like discover the power of music learning or something like that. I don't know. I'm just making up a scenario, everybody. Now, let's say I don't have all the copy ready yet for this experience, and I need some placeholder stuff that isn't lorem ipsum, just to kind of visualize how things are going to be laid out in this design, because all that I've got here right now is just placeholder stuff. So this is a great way, this is a great opportunity to utilize our AI tools in Studio. If you select the text box on your canvas, there's this contextual toolbar here at the top. And if you select Edit with AI, you can enter in a custom prompt, like maybe I can say a 50 word summary of the impact of music in learning. I don't know. Just generate. Again, I'm just winging this. but it allows you to put in that. It's actually pretty good, not bad. Music significantly enhances learning by improving memory, focus, and motivation. Not bad. That just took a couple seconds. But again, you can use AI tools, and if I think that that's too long, I could also shorten this or make it longer. There's a lot of things that you can do to kind of supplement the template content that's here by making things that are a little bit more personalized, even though they're placeholder assets. And then maybe for this text box in my button, I can change this to say, learn more, maybe center that. And it's starting to come together. I mean, this just took me a couple of moments, and I've already got my header section swapped out for the most part with my brand fonts, my brand colors, assuming I liked the ones that were in this template, or maybe my brand colors just happen to be the ones that were in this template. Again, I'm just doing this quickly, and it's a random scenario. And then I can make the determination if I wanted to replace this video up top, which is in the back. Also, a good idea to kind of see how everything's set up in the hierarchy when you're using a template. And if you need to replace things, there is the replace video function for videos here in the design panel. And for things like videos, there will be, like for this carousel image, for example, there will be the replace image function here on the right and also up top. So let's move on to this next section now. Okay, I've already got my header section good enough. Now I want to update the carousel assets, or at least this first one just as a demonstration. I've got my image selected in the mask, and then I can use the replace image function. And if I do that, it will retain all of the settings in the design panel. Like here we have the saturation value cranked down to make this image grayscale. If I like that, and if I like the animation that was applied to this image and I want to keep that, use the replace image function. Because if you do that, I'll actually use an AI image. I played viola in middle school. Fun fact. So I'll generate an AI image of a viola here to swap this in. I don't know if that's a violin or a cello. I'd have to see more of it. But we'll go with the viola here. And again, the AI tools are great for putting in placeholder content. Oh, this is kind of nice. It's a fairy playing a viola. Sure, why not? All right. And I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Looking good. But as you can see, when I replace that image, it retained the saturation value, and it's also going to retain the animation on the image here. So definitely make sure you are leveraging the replace image function. You're utilizing things like the AI tools to really help flesh out template experiences if you don't already have content ready to go. Of course, if you have stuff ready to plug in, use those assets instead of the AI ones that I used here. But again, it just took me a couple of moments to update this stuff. And again, going in, if I know what I'm going to have to adjust to achieve the needs and goals of my design, it's going to be a lot quicker to, take this content and repurpose it. Okay, let's now pretend that I didn't want something in this experience. Maybe this section right here, I want to omit. Maybe I don't need this section right here. What I could do is select it on the canvas right here, this results section, delete it. But now I've got a lot of canvas here that is empty. What do I do? Well, that is a great instance where the canvas adjustment tool can come in handy. It's kind of like this ice cream sandwich looking tool. If I select that, I can draw out an area on my canvas that I want to remove. So I can really tighten that up. And check that out. Can maybe move this up just a wee bit. Awesome. Maybe shorten this just a tad, maybe to 30. Looking good. Instead of having to move up all of those assets, I use the canvas adjustment tool to clean up that space. So again, you don't have to use anything that you don't want in a template experience. Just use the things that get you to where you need to be with your design. Update your copy, update your brand fonts, your colors. And then once you have a template finished, let's pretend I completed working on this template and I've got it ready to go to send off to my viewers. Then the real beauty is that I can make this into a template experience of my own. So check this out. So earlier I talked about the template gallery. here, which is again a place where you and your team can have your own experiences as templates alongside the Ceros Inspire ones. But if I know that maybe I'm going to use this case study multiple times and reiterate on it and scale it, I can turn this into a template, which I can do by selecting the options menu dots in the bottom right corner of this tile, select manage, select create template, and then this will now be my starting point for future iterations of this music case study experience. So all of the adjustments I made there to the copy, to the color, to the fonts, it's all right here. So again, it really allows you and your team to take the content that you've produced and scale it and repurpose it multiple times by templatizing your experiences. Because then if I'm in a folder moving forward, let's pretend next week I have, another instance that I need created of this experience, I can select create, find template, and then it's right here. And everything that was in that original version will be in this new version. All the interactions, animations, and the content. So again, it really is a great way to repurpose and get more mileage out of your content. Awesome. But the efficiencies do not stop there. Oh no. In addition to leveraging templates, you can also pull components out of templates or just other experiences that you and your team have created. So let's say, for example, I really like this carousel, and I know that I might need it in future experiences, but might not need the rest of the content in this template necessarily. I just want to kind of pick certain things from this that I can reuse in other experiences that are maybe unrelated to this theme. In that case, I can select this whole carousel group in my layers panel or on the canvas. I think with stuff like this where you have multiple components within a group, it's best to do your selection from the layers panel. That way you're ensuring that you get all of the base assets and all of the other interactive components within here. But once you have that selected, you can right click on it, select Save to Asset Library, and then pick a category you want to save this to. I already created one here for this demonstration that I called carousels. And if you're unfamiliar with where the asset library is, it is found right here in the toolbar, just beneath the AI tools. And you can save pretty much anything that you would like to your asset library. So we're talking logos, we're talking CTAs, pop-ups, carousels. Heck, you can even take entire sections of experiences. Like, hey, maybe I really like this header section up top. Guess what? I can save it to my asset library and use it in a future experience. How cool is that? So again, this really allows you to get more mileage out of your content, and these assets, like your templates, are also shared account wide. So if another user in another experience needed this carousel, like let's pretend I'll open up a new page or create a new page of this experience for demonstration, and we'll just pretend like this is a brand new experience. What I could do here is click and drag that carousel onto my canvas, and it's going to work functionally the same exact way as the original carousel did. It's going to have 3 slides. The animations will still be there. The image I plugged in is still going to be there. But again, allows you to get more mileage out of your content and have like a repurposable library of assets. Now, a couple of things to note here. I would make sure that when you're saving assets to your asset library, to have them descriptively named. Also, as you're updating templates too, make sure you're renaming things as you're going about, repurposing and saving things. That way, you and your team can have a much easier time locating those things and understanding how everything works together moving forward. So, like for example, if this content right here, this about the project section, was no longer about this project and the topic changed, I would rename this group or folder to something else that was more, reflective of what the content is here. And that goes doubly so for anything that's interactive. So if you have buttons or hotspots in your designs, especially if they come from templates, make sure you're updating those naming conventions in your layers panel, because whatever you call your interactive component studio side is what they'll show up as in your analytics. So really, the more descriptive you are, the better. It'll allow you to find things more easily in your layers and also give you better tracking for your analytics. Now, with the asset library, not only can you save your own assets to the asset library that you've maybe pulled from templates or just other experiences that maybe you have built from scratch. But we also have an entire folder of Ceros assets, which are yours to use, just like templates. And the cool thing about these team is that if you take maybe like a button or an arrow or a carousel and drag it onto the canvas, check this out. I've got the stock button right here, and I can go in, I can update it in a matter of seconds. Boom. I just changed the color fill and the font, and now I can save this back to my asset library. And that just took me a couple of moments, far less time than it would have to create this asset from scratch. So, another way to really maximize your content creation efficiency is utilizing the stock assets here in the asset library as part of the Ceros assets library. So, there are so many things you can pull from here, like carousels, headers, footers, buttons. I mean, honestly, use all of it. If there's something that you need that you don't have a resource for yet, chances are we probably have something in here that you can repurpose and make your own. Awesome. So I do see a question here. Where can we upload the assets? So yeah, so they have to exist in a canvas. So you would want to, if you were maybe bringing in assets that you had, like maybe let's say a logo, like I'll just use a logo that I've got right here as an example. Let's say I need to add this to my asset library. I would want to put it on my canvas. Doesn't matter what experience it's in. And then once it's on the canvas in Studio, I can right click on it, select Save to Asset Library, and then pick a category that I want to save that to. But I would also note here that as you start developing a library of assets, make sure that you're adding additional categories so that everything is neatly organized and you'll be able to find, all of your buttons, all of your logos a lot more quickly. And also make sure that you guys are using consistent naming conventions, not only for the reasons I mentioned earlier, but just to create brand cohesion across all of your experiences and assets. So get together with your teams as you're starting this process and figure out, hey, what are we going to call all of our buttons? What are we going to call all of our pop-ups? And stick to that naming convention because it really will help you guys utilize these things more effectively and efficiently because they'll all have similar naming conventions and they'll all adhere to the same styling and brand guidelines. That's a big thing to tackle early on as you're kind of creating a reusable library of assets and templates in your Ceros account. Cool. All right. So now that we've taken a look at templates, which again are pre-existing experiences that you can reuse and mold into creations of your own, we've examined the asset library, which is a library that has stock components that you can use or a place where you can save your own assets that you've created. Now let's talk about editor. So let's say I've gone through this process, I've created a couple of experiences, maybe I've used templates, maybe my team have created a couple things from scratch. Now we can bring in more contributors to the conversation and really start scaling our output. So once you have things built and you're going to reiterate them or have new versions of them, like maybe a monthly newsletter experience, that is the time to start using Editor. And Editor is a much more streamlined content creation part of the Ceros ecosystem. You can access it either from the admin or if you're in Studio, you can select the edit button right here. But it is a great way to bring in those less design savvy users into the fold because if you already have your templates, your components set up to where they're not doing a lot of managing with the interactivity, the animations, or designing things, they can just come in here, update your copy, update your images, and it takes just a matter of moments to do that because there's, very streamlined UI in here. But again, this kind of opens the conversation to, hey, let's get in, so and so from marketing, so and so from copywriting. We know that we're going to have, several of these experiences, these case study experiences be sent out over the next several weeks or months. And all we really need them to do is take the copy that's here and replace it with new copy or swap in a few images here or there. That's a pretty light lift. And editor users can then go in, maybe go into the settings panel, adjust the title or the URL of that experience. If this was like, October edition, let's pretend, or October in my URL. And then they can publish experiences directly from editor and then share those links to your viewers or your prospects. So again, it really allows everyone to play a role in the content creation process and it can open up the possibilities to really scale and reuse your content because now you're just, again, getting more mileage out of the content you've already created. Awesome. A couple other quick things that I want to get out of the way. If you are creating experiences for editor users, and there's only certain things that you want your editor users to touch, as a studio user, you can open up the settings panel here in the upper right corner of Studio, and there's an editor tab here. By default, all content will be editable, but let's say you only want certain text boxes or images to be able to be swapped out in your experience. You could select some content is editable. And then on those items that you want to give editor access to, you can select them either on the canvas or in the layers panel. Navigate down to the bottom of the design panel here and check this editable box. So this is a great way to manage permissions on, hey, what can my editor users have access to? Because sometimes you might not want to give them permissions to do everything or update everything in an experience. You just want a couple text boxes here, a couple images here, and that's totally fine. So again, just make sure that if that's your situation, to go into your settings panel, select the editor tab, make sure some content is editable is enabled here, and then choose the assets that you want to make editable. Awesome. Cool. Well, hopefully that whole process of kind of visualizing, hey, I'm starting from nothing. I want to hit the ground running with content creation. How can I get started with existing assets and then turn them into my own? Hopefully all of that provided you some insight and some tips and just get you thinking about how you can reuse a lot of the stock components, the templates that we have available in Inspire. But now I want to turn it over to our audience and answer any questions that you might have about something that you saw or something that you're just curious about when it comes to content creation efficiencies. And I see a question here from Lynn. Can we allow editor users to add new buttons and then edit what URLs they are linked to? Yes, absolutely, Lynn. So editor users do have access to updating interactions on assets themselves. So let's say, for example, I'll grab the button that I sourced earlier right here. Oh, did that not come out? Come on now. You can do it. Where'd it go? Whoa. I have no idea where that just went. Okay, well, the one is working on this page. I'll go back to editor. Okay, so let's say I've got my button here and I want my editor users to be able to update the interaction on it. I could select the button, and if it didn't already have an interaction, which in this case this one does, I could swap out my URL, and then back in editor, I can go to that page where the button is on, select the button on the canvas. Oh, I got to make it editable first. Let's do that again. And once it is editable, then my editor users can go in, find where the button's at. So now I'm selecting it on the canvas, navigate to interact, and here I can update the interaction by selecting this little pencil icon right here. And I can drop in a different URL. So maybe I want to go to educate.ceros.com, select update, and I can swap out the link on a button right here. Yes, they can add new assets, and they can even grab assets from the asset library as well. So if then I needed another button here, I could click and drag it out from my asset library onto the canvas. You can technically create assets from scratch in Editor, but typically you'll want to do most of your content creation in Studio because you're not able to update, layer names, group names in Editor. That's a Studio only function. So I would recommend, having all of your buttons, anything that an editor user might need to add in an experience already in your asset library. That way, again, they can just grab what they need from here, be it a logo or a button, and add content to the experience in editor if need be. So yes, Lynn, they can add new assets. Excellent. Any other questions? Oh, another one just popped up. Will those assets look good in a different viewport? So I'm assuming you mean different device variants. So that just depends on how they are designed. And for those of you that weren't aware, an experience can be adjusted for different device views with the layouts drop-down menu here up top. So this experience actually came with a mobile version, So I could select that here. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes templates just have desktop versions. But if this didn't have a mobile version, here, let's pretend like this didn't have a mobile version for demonstrations. Let's say I've gone through, I've finished my desktop version. Now I want to create a mobile version. By doing this, I will now bring in all of the assets, the interactions, and the animations from my desktop version over to mobile. And then as you can see, the canvas is just a little bit more narrow because it's intended for vertical, viewport viewing. So I can make the determination here, hey, do I just want this to just kind of be centered align? So certain things might translate well to mobile. Um, but certain other things won't. I mean, it's kind of case by case. Certain sections I think work well on different viewports, regardless of how large or small the screen device is, or device screen is. But other things you might need to adjust a little bit. Maybe take a different approach to how it's laid out, or enlarge certain components. One thing I would say with buttons and hotspots is when you're creating mobile variants, make those things a little bit larger on mobile. That way you can give your mobile viewers a little bit more of an area to tap on something. That is correct. It is a manual fix. So there's only going to be a couple of things that will sync between your layouts. So like if I were to adjust my copy, like the characters in the text box, on my mobile version or desktop version, those would sync between my layouts. Or if I swapped out an image on one layout, it would swap it on the other as well. But pretty much anything else, any other styling tweaks, any positioning tweaks, all those changes need to be made to each individual layout. So it is a manual process currently, yes. Lynn asks, can you make it so that when an editor adds something like a button to the desktop, it will automatically add it to mobile or a tablet version? Like I said, Lynn, everything that you add to layouts once they've been created will need to be done on each layout. So for that reason, we really recommend finishing your desktop version first. That way you have all of that content on mobile. But once those layouts have been created, once they are, different device variants, each new thing that you add to one layout will also need to be added to the other layouts. Good questions, everybody. Okay. Any other questions? Can be anything. All right. If not, I can show you a couple of resources for next steps. Okay, I'll monitor the chat in case any more come in, but I'm going to show you a couple of places where you can learn more about Editor. Maybe if you're a newer Studio user, where you can learn more about Studio as well. And that's all going to be done on Educate. So we've got our courses section here on the tabs on the left. Highly recommend checking this out if you're a newer user. You can dive into the basics of Studio, really learn the ins and outs of interactivity and animations. If you are going to be making content updates in Editor, highly recommend checking out Editor 101, especially if you're going to be bringing in individuals that are going to be repurposing content but not necessarily designing. And then I would also recommend heading out to our weekly office hours if you need some live support with myself or another member of my team. We can do things like help you brainstorm, walk you through how to tackle a specific module, how to update a specific template. There's a lot of things that we can discuss in these office hours. Awesome. Well, once again, thank you all so much for attending our webinar today. Hopefully, you're walking away from this session learning more or having a better idea of how you can take content and save time in that process of creating dynamic, engaging experiences, and also a couple different ways that you can scale and repurpose that content moving forward. Awesome. Well, until next time, again, thanks for coming out. We hope to see you soon, and bye for now. Take care, everyone.